the crust that we're on, and all of that gas is causing it to bubble up, and then it starts erupting and flowing out slowly and cooling on the ocean floor. So layer upon layer upon layer, you know, that hot spot is kind of melting the crust and fueling these eruptions. And then like as the volcano builds up, we'll get magma chambers kind of in the foundation, which are feeding more eruptions. And over time, you know, the island will build up out of the ocean. And then after the volcano becomes extinct, you know, the waves will come and they'll crash on the shore, and rain will happen, and erosion will crumble it back down into the sea. And so then we have this plate moving on top of the hot spot. And so over time, we have this same process of the volcanic activity making the lava, you know, building up the mountain, and then erosion crumbling it away, and kind of rinse and repeat. Okay, I'll hold it up. Okay, so this is Owen's rock. Did anybody that picked up a rock off the ground find something that looks kind of like this? Do you want to hold this rock for a second? Is it heavy or is it light?
Light.
Pretty light?
Yeah.
What color is it?
Red.
How does it compare to the rock that's in your hand?
This is kind of just gray.
Yeah. So this rock is red. His rock is gray. Pretty lightweight. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting rock. So we've got some different colorations in the rock here. Your rock's got some neat coloration. What are some things you notice about that?
Well, it's brownish, black, little glaze, and a little bit porous.
Porous?
Yeah.
Yeah. So some of the rocks have these like little holes in them. So there's some cool colors in that rock in the kind of the glazing. Do you see on the other side? There's like some purple and some orange. Any guesses as to the coloration?
Mix of materials.
I'd say the heat.
Heat?
Yeah.
Minerals?
Yeah.
Those are two fantastic guesses. For 90% of the rocks here in Haleakala, that is true. For this rock, unfortunately, that coloration does come from Crayola. It's crayon. In this rock's previous life, it was used on an education program and some kids scribbled on it. So please don't color the rocks here, because no rock is just a rock, and we don't like it when you color on them. But other than that, yes, it usually is the different minerals that make up the rock, how they cooled, how they formed, how long they've been around does dictate the color. What about you?
It has like a root.
It looks like a root.
Yeah.
Yeah, so some of the rock here is kind of rough and bumpy like this one, but some of it can be like pretty smooth and make these weird like kind of ropey looking spirals.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
a rope. Yeah.
Mhm. All right, let's go you two. You have interesting rocks. What color is your rock?
Mine is black with green crystal.
Black with green crystals.
Yeah, mine's the same. It's black, kind of halfway, and then like gold, greenish, really sparkly.
Yeah. Guys, borrow both of your rocks.
You got it. We'll take that one.
Okay, so we've got some rocks that are kind of black and kind of porous, just like the other rocks are around. But these ones have these like funky green crystals all over them. This green crystal is called olivine. It's one crystal that does form in the volcanic rock here. So a lot of stuff like olivine, you know, is like really high temperature magma that's cooling very slowly and kind of solidifying. And so these olivine crystals will form kind of in the magma chambers, and then when it erupts, it kind of gets all churned to the surface, and we find it kind of dispersed throughout the rock. And so that's what you're looking at, is the crystal called olivine. And then you have an interesting rock as well. What you got?
It's like diamond shape, like it's smooth on the sides, and yeah, that's it.
Look like crystal.
Wow. You look like a diamond.
Yeah.
Looks like someone cut that.
Palm Pilot. Yeah, so and then so this is a fun one, because if everybody just kind of takes a second to look at the ground, you'll notice that it's kind of sparkly, right? And then like a lot of the rocks that we're sitting on too, like if you look close at it, you can see that they have these really tiny black crystals in them. And they're just like, even like the ground sparkly is all this same stuff. This is called algite. And it's another kind of crystal that forms in the lava rock here. And then when the rock kind of crumbles and breaks away around it, this is much harder, and you'll see it kind of scattered across the ground. So that's what we're looking at, right? So the thing is, you know, we have olivine, which is this green crystal. We have algite, which is this black crystal. But other than these two kind of crystals, the rest of the rock, whether it's smooth and ropey, whether it's red, whether it's rough, whether it's heavy, it's all basalt. You know, it's all the same kind of lava rock for the most part, right? But depending on how it erupted and how it cooled kind of gives it the texture that it has. But the differences in the basalt really do tell the story of the mountain, right? So, I guess Haleakala, right, first became an island, you know, like 1.2 million years ago, and it's been building up layer upon layer, slowly since then. But we're actually a little later on in this volcano's life. So, at the peak of its shield building stage, like the tallest this volcano ever was, we estimate that there might have been another 3 to maybe even 5,000 feet of mountain. This thing could have been 15,000. Thank you also for your participation with the rocks. If you want to sit back down, you can, or you can stay and hang out. It's all good. Thank you. But yeah, so we think it might have been 15,000 feet above sea level. So while it is not technically a crater, it is still a pretty incredible place. You know, the floor down there is one of the quietest places on the planet. Most of the plants and animals you see there exist nowhere else in the whole world. It's a very sacred place in Hawaiian culture. It's known as Wawakua, which is the realm of the gods. And so we're all very fortunate to be here. And if you do go walk down there, know that it's amazing, but also know that it is 3,000 feet down, 7 miles across, and 4 miles wide, which means that if you hike 3,000 feet down, you also have to hike 3,000 feet back up after the fact, and it's going to take longer, and you should probably bring food and water and sunscreen, because at 10,000 feet this close to the equator, the sun is pretty intense.
Question.
Yes?
Any of those formations down there are man-made?
So, to give you some kind of tips and tricks and things that we look for as to whether it might erupt again, does anybody know some things that we monitor? What to look for if it's going to erupt?
Earthquake.
Earthquakes, absolutely correct. So we can have earthquakes here for a variety of reasons. You know, the mountain itself, as we've gone through this process of erupting and then cooling and then erupting and cooling over time, it's kind of cracked apart, and there's a couple different rift zones. So as the island settles, sometimes those rift zones will slip and we'll get an earthquake because of that. But also, you know, if there's magma kind of coming back up into another chamber, it's gonna melt, it's gonna destabilize things. Even though we're not over the hotspot anymore, we're still connected to the mantle, and if one of those magma chambers is refilling, there's always a chance that we'll get these longer duration, more massive earthquakes. But a generally good rule of thumb is that if you do witness an earthquake, just look uphill from you. Look for that volcanic smog, look for that smoke, because lava, like the fastest pahoehoe flows are like maybe 30 miles an hour, so you can get out of the way. And if you could stay on this side of the fence, please. And the reason for that is because erosion is such a dominant force here. You know, the rocks look like they're pretty solid, but they do fall all the way down into the crater all the time, and you don't want to fall with them. But yeah, so we monitor earthquakes. We do look for geothermal phenomena, so if you find a hot spring on Maui, don't go swim in it, because that means that there's magma coming up. You know, any magma chambers we have now are at least below the water table. So hot springs on Maui, not a good thing. And then the last thing is like general bulging, swelling, deformation of the mountain. But yeah, you know, thank you for all being interested in learning more about the geologic story here in Haleakala. And as you travel around, definitely try to learn about as many perspectives as you can. Learn some mo'olelo, learn some stories, because they do really help us understand the whole story of this place. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.